Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday lesson. Hope you guys are all well. We've been away for 2 weeks. We had some technical problems. We had some technical glitches. And last week we had a bit of a slight medical situation in the house. So unfortunately, we couldn't do a lesson. But today we're going to carry on as usual. So our lesson today is named "From My Flesh I Shall See God." Now, we're reading Baal Islam articles. As you know, we finished the first semester, second semester, third semester. We've done a bunch of semesters. And basically what we're doing is going deeper into Baal Islam articles. So once we're done with these, we'll move on to Rabash articles. Maybe we'll do even some Pticha or Talmud Eser Sefrot. So we'll delve deeper into Kabbalistic articles. But as students of B'nai Baruch, we should learn and know what Baal Islam's articles are talking about, what his style is, and we should understand what he's trying to give us. So this article is a bit long. Maybe it'll take us 2 lessons or even maybe 3. We'll see how we go. But because it's a long one, what I'll do is I'll go subtitle by subtitle, and after every subtitle, we'll go over it and see what he's trying to explain to us. And hopefully we'll do a good job of understanding what he's talking about. So, "From my flesh I shall see God." I hope you guys have the link. Yeah, the link was sent to the article. All right, great. So let's start. "It's impossible to sustain one's body in the world without a certain amount of knowledge about the corporeal nature, such as knowing which drugs are lethal and what things burn and do harm to us, as well as knowledge and assessment of knowing which drugs are lethal and what things burn and do harm in the material world." Just so, in fact, let me just bring the article here this way, okay? So I can work on this a bit better. There you go. And there we go. Okay. This way I can read while facing the camera. "Just so man's soul cannot exist in the next world until it has acquired a certain amount of the nature of the systems of the spiritual worlds, their changes, couplings, and generations. We discern 3 periods in the body. The first is the form, the time of birth, when one has no knowledge whatsoever, and all that is required to know in order to exist comes from the father and mother, and one is sustained by their keeping and wisdom. This state is the first katnut. The second is when a person has grown and acquired some knowledge. At that time, one can keep from things that harm one's body through joint keeping, that of the father and mother, and that of one's own. This is the second katnut. The third is the state of gadlut, which is adulthood, when one has acquired sufficient knowledge for a life to look after oneself, enough to survive. At that time, one departs the authority of one's father and mother and acquires self-rule. This is the third state, the state of gadlut. Likewise, concerning the soul, a person reincarnates until one acquires the wisdom of truth in full. Without them, the soul cannot reach its full level. But it is not that the knowledge one has acquired raises the level of the soul. Rather, it is the soul's inherent nature that the knowledge of one has acquired raises the level of the soul. Rather, it is the soul's inherent nature. Sorry, let me take that paragraph again. I slipped a line. Likewise, concerning the soul, a person reincarnates until one acquires the wisdom of truth in full. Without them, the soul cannot reach its full level. But it is not that the knowledge one has acquired raises the level of the soul. Rather, it is the soul's inherent nature that it will not grow by its own effort before it has acquired the knowledge of the spiritual nature. Its growth depends on the measure of its knowledge. The reason this is so is that if it could grow without knowing, it would be harmed, like an infant who is ignorant and cannot walk. If it could walk on its own 2 feet, it would throw itself into a fire. However, the growth comes primarily through good deeds, which depend on attaining the wisdom of truth. And both the knowledge and the good deeds depend on attaining the wisdom of truth. And for the above reason, both come together. This is the meaning of, if you know not, go forth and see, etc. Therefore, each complete soul attains all the souls of Adam Harishon to the end of correction, as one perceives one's acquaintances and neighbors, and according to one's knowledge, guards oneself from them, or connects and lives with them. And it is not surprising that one attains all the souls, since spirituality does not depend on time or place, and there is no death there. So here is a little introduction. Baal Islam is basically comparing matters or examples, let's say, right? Examples from our world in our growth in corporeality. And it's comparing it to spirituality, saying just like we grow up in the world from childhood, we begin to understand the world. And through the understanding of the world, we become independent and, build a life for ourselves. He's saying we need to do the same for spirituality. However, for us to do that, first, we must acquaint ourselves with spirituality. So what is spirituality? How does one get there? So how we're supposed to move forward in spirituality. So all these things we need to learn first so that we can actually guide ourselves, just like kids go to school and learn about, laws of this world. A person who's studying the wisdom of Kabbalah is also calling it here the wisdom of truth, also begins to grow himself to acquaint oneself with spirituality. So he's saying it's the same growth process. If we grow properly, we begin to understand this world. So if we were to grow properly in our spiritual development, we'll begin to understand the spiritual realm, where we can actually then have some kind of consciousness as to the whole of reality and what we're doing in this reality. And this is actually the way he describes it as such is not a surprise to us, because in the education center or the learning center lessons, if you recall, in the first semester, we spoke about root and branch. So everything that actually happens, all the systems that exist in spirituality also govern our world here in corporeality. So just like kids grow, just like people have relationships here, the person's soul also grows. And as we are all parts of one soul called Adam Harishon, the same thing, just like we have a society here, humanity, in spirituality also, there is this concept of a lot of souls which are part of one soul. Just like here, we're a bunch of people part of one system. So this whole thing works well together, the way he explained it, and it's much more comprehensible than giving us any idea that does anything about spirituality that's not really concrete. Yeah, so we should look at this world, understand how this world is set up, and actually decipher how we're going to grow up in spirituality as well, because laws of nature do not change. So just like children grow here, we will grow in spirituality exactly the same way. Right? So there's the body, which is our corporeal essence. We live here in this corporeal body, in this corporeal perception of reality, let's call it. And according to this perception of reality, we have a certain growth period. And the same token, we have a soul, anybody with a dot in the heart, who now wants to come and develop that dot in the heart and make a soul for himself out of it, a higher level of perception, that is. So acquiring that higher level of perception obviously requires some work, and that work and study is parallel to exactly how a person works and studies in this world to learn something. All right. So if you have any questions, let me know. If not, we're going to carry on. The second heading is called Body and Soul. Everybody, body as in the body. Body in the wisdom of Kabbalah means the desire to receive for one's self. So when we talk about the body, we're talking about corporeality, but corporeality means I live in a desire to receive for myself. That's corporeality. Okay, so if you live in that way, you perceive a corporeal reality. So when we're talking about the body, you need to understand that it's not really this flesh or this sack of bones that we're talking about. Body means that I'm living in a certain state, which is the desire to receive, wanting to receive for its personal self-fulfillment and benefit. And if I live in that nature, it means I live in corporeality. And this level, this world, is how I perceive that reality. All right, quite chaotic, isn't it? So let's see. Everybody is impatient and ill-tempered, for its livelihood is through incarnations, through the 7 years of famine and the 7 years of abundance. It is an inexorable law that the years of famine cause the years of abundance to be forgotten, and the body reincarnates between them like stones grinded by water. And another plight awaits all around it. It imagines that one's friend is happy and content. This comes because at its basis, the soul is grinded between the good inclination and the evil inclination. It incarnates between them, at times feeling relief by the surrounding good inclination, and at times suffering an additional plight by the surrounding evil inclination. So body and soul here, once again, body is when I'm living in a desire to receive for myself. Soul is when I'm living in bestowal, just like the Creator. So a person reincarnates in order to overcome his corporeal reality and build his spirituality. And this phases of growth is called reincarnation. Now, sometimes people say reincarnation is when we die and come back, die and come back. Well, reincarnation is a bit different in the wisdom of Kabbalah. In fact, reincarnation means any inner change that I've been through, simply because if I'm going through inner changes, it means I'm renewing myself. So reincarnation isn't this corporeal body dying and coming back and dying and coming back and so on. Otherwise, you couldn't really make sense of the increase in population. However, though, what's logical here, what we need to understand about body and soul, is how our desire to receive for ourselves is constantly changing. And it's changing through this thing called suffering. Because the more the desire to receive is unfulfilled, unhappy. Look at the state of the world right now, right? We're in the 21st century. And before the coronavirus, half the world was depressed, half of it was, hungry. The other well-off half was depressed. Everybody's on antidepressants and so on. And now we've got the COVID-19. The whole world has come under this really, stressful period. So this corporeal level of existence is actually pressuring us from all sides. It's the path of suffering, where suffering is really grinding us like coffee beans. We're being grinded and grinded and grinded. And this grinding process is also making those coffee beans really fine. Okay, so it's making it really fine and pure. The coarseness is fading away. And same thing with humanity. As we get grinded with suffering, we become more sensitive, we become calmer, and we become more questioning about meaning of life. So over the next several months, actually, we'll begin to see, especially after winter, we'll begin to see humanity really beginning to contemplate. You'll also see it probably with people around you as well. You'll begin to see a lot of people contemplating about the meaning of life. Why are we living? What's there to live for? What's the meaning of it all? So this period of contemplation about the meaning of life can only come if a person is going through some kind of turmoil and trouble. And we'll be seeing a problematic period for humanity during during the next several months as well ahead of us. So it's not going to be very pretty. As humanity, we're going to go through some heavy challenges, but these challenges can be for the better if we use them for growth. if we don't, and if we just try to run away from all these sufferings and problems that we're getting, obviously, if you fail the test, you got to take it again. So life will have to put us back into a similar procedure to ensure that we understand what we're going through and why we're going through it and what we need to do. And the soul, in the same way, it's growing. The soul also goes through suffering, but it's at a different level. So spiritual suffering is when you're feeling the inability to bestow. You want to bestow, but you just can't do it. You can't manage it, or you don't have a desire for it, but you have an inclination for it. And it's like you love someone and you just can't do something good for them. That's the kind of suffering you have in spirituality. Whereas in this world, I want something and I can't get it and I'm suffering from it. So we'll see. This is why I said a minute ago that the whole world will get through this suffering, because, people will want things, but they won't be able to get it. And that's going to be very problematic. All right. So body and soul, they complement each other's development. One without the other cannot happen. Otherwise, we would not be inside a body. We'd just be a spiritual entity growing. But the corporeal entity, this corporeality that we call the desire to receive, wanting to receive for itself, needs to exist so we can build spirituality on top of it. Because reality, as you know, from perception of reality, is perceived from two opposite ends. So corporeality and spirituality being two opposite, two exact opposites at extreme levels, need to exist together for the person to actually develop himself in physicality, in spirituality from physicality. All right, so far no questions, right? Okay, good. The next subtitle, Obtaining Knowledge in Corporeality and in Spirituality. The connection between the body and the soul is only that in the former, things happen to it naturally and by themselves, and in the latter, they happen through work and joint relation between the spiritual and the corporeal. The advantage of the spiritual over the corporeal is that in the corporeal there is reality, even without attaining all the incidents, similar to the perception of an infant who does not know the reason for the thing and will also not eat something that is harmful. But in the spiritual, no reality is attained prior to knowing the events and their outcomes. So to the extent of the knowledge of the events, so is the attainment of one's own greatness and the attainment of the surrounding spiritual reality. Okay, so just like we have to attain knowledge to survive in this world, we need some kind of knowledge in order to start our spiritual growth. So the connection here between body and soul is like root and branch. Okay. Now the advantage, let's read that second paragraph again. The advantage of the spiritual over the corporeal is that in the corporeal there is a reality even without attaining all the incidents, similar to the perception of an infant who does not know the reason of the thing and will also not eat something that is harmful. But in the spiritual, no reality is attained prior to knowing the events and their outcomes. To the extent of the knowledge of the events, so is the attainment of one's own greatness and the attainment of the surrounding spiritual reality. So in corporeality, we can exist without actually knowing what's going on in the world. A lot of people live life and they don't really understand how life works, how nature works, how their own nature works. People just live like animals live. Animals also don't understand how the whole world is functioning. So in corporeality, you can actually exist without knowing many of the things that are really essential for you, for your survival, laws of nature, and so on. At the end of the day, if you don't know the creation, if you don't know creation, you can't really adapt to it. But we see in corporeality that without a lot of knowledge, you can get by, you can survive, and so on. In spirituality, it's not as such. In spirituality, you constantly have to build one layer on top of the other to make sure that you get a full spectrum. And you can't really go to the next level without completing that one level. So in spirituality, there's an depth and width in terms of perception, which a person has to build. And the greater that depth and width is, obviously, the greater his height is. Whereas in corporeality, you can have a person who learned, just basic things in life and hasn't added anything else to himself, and can end up actually getting old and dying off like that. In spirituality, you can't do that. You can't grow unless you discover more, attain more, and build more. Otherwise, there's no going forward. Whereas in corporeality, well, you see a lot of people who are ignorant, they live ignorantly, and they just die. And for them, it's no big deal. Okay, so let's go to the next heading, revelation of the works of the Creator in concealment. All right, so this is important because at the end of the day, when we start studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, we don't feel the Creator, we don't see the Creator, he's all concealed. So how to work with concealment is an important topic for a student of Kabbalah. And from here, we should get a few ideas. Let's see what Baal Stam is telling us. Revelation of the works of the Creator in concealment. Then I was by him as a master craftsman, and I was daily a delight. Our sages interpreted to mean to inform that prior to the days of the Messiah, when receiving proselytes, the craftsmen come out towards them, and each craftsman plays with him. On the first day, he reveals the light. On the second, he makes the firmament, etc. These are the 6 work days, and all delight in resting on the 7th day, placing in it sanctity and blessing to the worlds. This is the meaning of what our sages said, that prior to bringing the first fruit, all the craftsmen stand before them. That is precisely when they are called wise. However, the craftsmen do not stand before disciples of the wise. Come and see how great is the commandment in its time. The merit of the Sabbath is that in it is the blessing and sanctity to correct all the weekdays. And although it seems as though the correction depends on the work days and not on the days of rest, which is the Sabbath, in which one does not work at all, it is not so. Rather, the blessing and sanctity of the Sabbath corrects the weekdays. Indeed, each correction seemingly requires work, but in truth, the power of the Creator appears in full only in concealment. For when the power of concealment disappears from the world, perfection promptly appears by itself. And as one who throws one's staff to the firmament, the staff flies up because the power of the thrower is in it. Therefore, the entire duration of the flight is attributed to the power of the thrower. Also, the strength of the thrower appears at that time. Conversely, during its whole return and fall towards the earth, the power of the thrower is not attributed to the fall at all. Rather, it returns to its root by itself without any assistance. Similarly, in all the concealments, the work of the Creator is apparent. But in the return to perfection, no work or power are required, because in the absence of the preventing force, it returns to its root and perfection by itself. This is the meaning of, and God rested on the 7th day, for in it he rested from all his work. That is, on the day the power of the work of the Creator was removed from the world, after having worked to establish it in its current form throughout the work days. But on the 7th day no power worked, but it was left alone, as it is written, and I will take away my hand. Thus, naturally, the force of perfection is imprinted specifically on that day, so that the power of concealment will not work here. All right, so this is a bit mind-baffling or mind-boggling. Okay, revelation of the Creator, works of the Creator in concealment. As we work in concealment, which means that we don't perceive the Creator, we don't feel the Creator, but we're working on it, right? So we're studying the wisdom of Kabbalah and we're working in our tens, in our groups. So as we work together, the Creator is not there. But all the time when we're working together, what happens is we go through these changes because of the interaction between us. Because all of the interaction between humans is the cause and consequence of their development. Our efforts to connect, to unite, and therefore go through these sensations that are lived between us inside the group towards the purpose of creation is actually the Creator's work on us. So on the one hand, we as the individual needs to do the work, which is called the 6 work days. And then the Creator has to complement it, which is actually a limit where beyond there, I can't really do anything. Okay, so that's what the Sabbath is. This is why there's no work on Sabbath, because I've done everything on the 6 days of work. And on the 7th, there's nothing I can do about it. So the Creator has to complement it. So while we work under concealment, we come to a certain maturity at that level, and the Creator has to complement it, so has to kind of like finish the work on the Sabbath. So the 6 days of work, when we're talking about it, obviously we're not talking about the weekdays, right? 6 days of work means that for a certain spiritual degree or a certain spiritual state, I'm doing my best. So I'm really working on it. I want to build a new spiritual level. I do the best I can, which these are called my work days. And I bring the situation to such a state where there's nothing else I can do anymore. So I have to then turn to the Creator and invite the Creator to finish the job off, because only He can change our nature. So this passing from the 6 work days to the Sabbath is actually the person's call to the Creator, so the Creator can start finishing off what man started. And this is why we know the Creator by His actions. This is what it really means when we're working through a certain period of state and we're overcoming as best we can what we can do, and then the Creator finishes it off. So His action then becomes revealed as you attain that new degree. Okay, until you attain that new degree, it's all under concealment because you don't know what's going to happen. Same principles work in this world as well. Many times we do a lot of things and we don't really know how it's going to turn out. We have an idea, or we have a plan, or we have a certain, imagination of how it might turn out or how it's going to turn out according to how we think about it. However, though, we don't really know how it's going to turn out until it turns out however it turns out. So in spirituality, it's the same way. I'm doing the best I can for a certain period of time and building a certain situation in order to go up one level higher. And then the Creator has to finish my work by just making that change towards spirituality. And that's called the Sabbath. So it's a special moment. It's not a day. It's not a Saturday. Okay. It's not a Saturday. A Sabbath can be any day. It could be a Tuesday, Thursday. It doesn't matter when. It's just talking about the state we're going through in spirituality when we're, climbing up the rungs of the ladder. And this is how we should always remember that Sabbath is the time when I've done everything that I can, and now the Creator has to finish off the work so I can move up one rung in the ladder towards spirituality. And it's not a Saturday, it's not a special day, like I said, it's a state. Okay? It has nothing to do with the days of the calendar. All right. Attaining the spiritual form. So let's see what's going on here. Attaining the spiritual form. It is likewise in attaining the spiritual form. The attaining errs in its 2 forms. One, that it will not be imaginary whatsoever. And 2, that its attainment will be beyond any doubt, just as one does not doubt one's own existence. The title spiritual indicates that it is resembled to the wind, where although the wind has no edge, similitude, or appearance, no person doubts its existence, since one's life depends on it. If the wind is sucked out of the house, should an animal be taken there, it will die. Hence, its existence is obvious, for it is one's life. And from the corporeal, we can understand the spiritual. The essence of the inner mind is similar to the interior of the body, which is called the soul of every flesh, regarded as Havaya with its deficiency. Likewise, the internality of the mind, called the intellectual soul, is also deficient Havaya. It is so because such a being, which feels its existence, feels its deficiencies. This is not so in animals, which are completely devoid of that perception and are completely devoid of the intellectual soul and its internality. Because of it, they feel its deficiency, so the extent required for their physical existence, its vitality, is measured by the extent of the consistency of the sensation of lack. And if it does not feel a lack, it cannot feed itself and continue its existence, and it dies. Moreover, its size and health depend on the sensation of the lack, like the corporeal body, where the healthier also has a greater appetite and therefore eats more and thus grows bigger and healthier. All right, so let's see what we're talking about here. Attaining spirituality. Now, when attaining spirituality, two principles are really important. I'm just going to read them because they're quite obvious. One is that it will not be imaginary whatsoever. So attaining something, just like rubber is not imaginary, it's rubber. I know what it is, okay? Spirituality is the same. It cannot be imaginary. It's like, I know for a fact that this is it. Two, that its attainment will be beyond any doubt, just as one does not doubt one's own existence. All right, so no imaginations and no doubts. Spirituality is something really concrete, nothing airy, fairy. The title spiritual indicates that it's resembled to the wind. So he's actually making a resemblance of it here, just like we need air, but air is not seen. It has no corners, edges, nothing. But we understand it exists, and we understand we need it to survive. So the spiritual is the same thing, kind of. We understand we need it for existence. So our soul is a necessity. We understand we need it, and we understand it exists. But for the moment, we just don't have a grasp of it. So he's explaining in the first paragraph, listen, spirituality is nothing imaginary, at least not in the wisdom of Kabbalah, that's for sure. And also it's beyond any doubt. So a person has concrete attainment. He understands cause and consequence for everything that happens. And this understanding is also a spiritual attainment, because at the end of the day, cause and consequence are really relating to the actions of the Creator, what the Creator is doing, and from those actions, how we perceive, understand, and live, exist with Him. Okay, so spirituality is in the wisdom of Kabbalah something really concrete. It doesn't leave any room for imagination, and it's like you're holding, I don't know, it's like I'm holding my glasses in my hand. It's nothing to imagine about it. It's crystal clear, and this is exactly how spirituality should be for everyone who's attaining it in the wisdom of Kabbalah. Okay. The need to attain the emanator, or the need to attain the Creator. We must still know the lack that the intellectual soul feels. Let me tell you that it is the need to attain its emanator. for it is engraved in its nature to crave to know its emanator and creator, since it feels its own existence. That is, it has been prepared by default to search what is above. It cannot be said that this lack is not defined in attaining its emanator, but that it rather pursues all the secrets and wishes to know about supernatural things and incarnations, and about what is in one's friend's heart, and so on. This is not according to the rule that I have written above, that the internality of the matter is that which does not extend oneself. If it were, a lack of attainment would be depicted only in its maker. But it is clear that only its attainment is an internal lack, which is not called an offshoot, but an inquiry in the creatures is an extension towards others. For had there not been creations in the world, such as if it were the only creation, it would not have been pursuing to attain them whatsoever. But attaining its emanator is a deficiency toward itself, and this is its being. That is, it feels itself as an emanated being. All this events aim towards it, and this is the deficiency that it feels, that it will be able to attain its emanator. And to the extent that it perceives that vision, we can accurately measure the size of its own body. Now, this is interesting because in all of us, including children, actually, when we were children, I'm sure you must have asked your parents who created us, right? So every child really has this question. And they ask in a really pure, simple way because they're just curious about it. So inside all of us, because we are created beings, there's this question embedded in us that, what is the creator? Who is the creator? Who made us? Who created us? So this is already inside of us. And this is why, like I said a while ago as well, due to worldly pressures in life that we're going to experience as the whole of humanity, we're going to start delving into this question more and more in humanity. So all of a sudden, humanity will be going through this inner transformation. We'll be going through this questioning about life. And this is a very natural thing. Okay, this is why it says it, he's written about it here. It's a really natural thing because we feel as if we have been created. We don't feel like we created ourselves. So in order to actually attain ourselves, we need to find the creator. Otherwise, man can't attain himself either. So it's a bit of a dilemma. So, and this is by default, this is like a software. Imagine a software, this default software running inside of us. This default software is pushing us to find the creator, because without him, we also don't feel like we exist. We can't really put our finger on the purpose of our existence. So in order to realize ourselves, discovering the creator is a must. Okay. And this is a really interesting thing in life. And this is how life is, like pressuring us, pushing the whole of humanity right now to ask this question: what are we living for? Okay. So this need to find the creator, attain the creator, is naturally in all of us. Okay. The next subheading is attaining the emanator. Okay, if we go at this rate and we don't have any questions, oh, well, we still won't be able to finish. No, okay, it's quite long. Attaining the emanator. It is written, "For you did not see any image." This requires interpretation, for what fool would think and gather that there is any corporeal similitude in the Creator? But in truth, this is why there is attainment in the Creator in the world. For no desire awakens for that which does not exist in reality. Rather, we can discuss this in the spiritual kind and its ordinances, which is more spiritual than the whole of reality. This is the meaning of the mind whose form grips man's sensation in discerning truth and falsehood. This distinction is called the mind's body, according to the perception of the corporeal ones. For this reason, the discernment was defined as part of God above, which is truly devoid of any similitude, but is only gripped in the senses and is called a decision or reality, or absence of reality, which is clarified in laws and ways. That verse is called the body of the mind and its image. We can say about it that this verse is part of God above, for which this image is included in oneself and one's perception of oneself and one's existence. The image in this verse is a complete and constant image of its situation, which cannot be completely annulled or slightly. It is called a proven and necessary form without additions or subtractions. This is the meaning of I and you shall not have. We heard them from the Mighty One. The word I also includes you shall not have, meaning that if the Creator had necessarily been revealed to them, no law or warning would have been depicted. You shall not have, but the Creator would have been revealed to them by His will, and it would not be an imperative. It's like a person who shows his wealth to his friend and tells him, I can show it to you, but now you do not recognize my wealth at all. So exert yourself to remember this form, and then I will want to give you part of my wealth, let alone that you will see all my wealth, as long as you keep this form in your memory. That is, I did not give you the decision by an imperative on which there is no ruler. Rather, I am the ruler, for all the earth is mine. All the seeing is with his simple will. And when I want, you will not remember, even what you saw in the vision. And when I do want, you will always see me. Moreover, I will also remind you all the forgotten things. This is the form, the wonders of the Creator, who cannot be depicted by any intellect, meaning to grasp the matter in full while keeping that man's mind, and it is voluntary and not compulsory to remain for the governance of the uppers, for the governance of the upper one. All right, this is also quite confusing. Okay, confusing is the right word for it. Okay, so Bala Slum wrote this a long time ago, so his texts are a little confusing. But basically, let's take a look at it from our perspective. How would we attain the Creator? What does it mean to attain the Creator? So imagine yourself in our relationship here with our parents. Okay, so we have a parent, mom or dad or whatever, it doesn't matter. And through our relationships, we grow. As we grow, we begin to understand them, plus or minus, more or less. But we actually do not understand our parents at all until we become parents ourselves. Okay? So this whole concept of understanding our parents will never happen until you become a dad or you become a mum as well. Then you can say, okay, now I know what it's like to be mum and dad, or mum or dad. So same here, attaining the Creator is the same. So we have to think of it that way. So just like our parents want to give us everything, but we don't actually know, when we're children, we don't know what they have. When we're kids, we don't know if they're rich or poor. When we just, we're just being raised. So as we grow up and up, we begin to discover the greater reality. And within that greater reality, we can then begin to understand how we grew up, what factors influenced our growth, how our parents treated us, and so on. So this is the same concept with the Creator. So once a person is advancing in spirituality, attaining the Creator is also by feeling His guidance on yourself. How does one feel that? Well, that one feels that in the group. As we study and as we learn together, the influence of the Creator will begin to be felt in me. How? By the inner changes I go through. right? So, a lot of students say, well, I'm not going to feel the creator and so on. Well, you're going to feel the creator because you're working on something. And as we work in spirituality, we get a consequence. So there's a cause, your study, and the consequence, the changes you go through. So those changes you're going through are like, the creator working on us. He's growing us. How? By allowing us to discover reality. How is reality discovered? With the sensations I now discover in me, the new ones. Because most of the time when we live our life, when you go through your day-to-day routine, think about it for a moment. How many things are you really feeling in you that's changing? What do you actually feel like changed in you as you live your day-to-day life? Nothing really. We wake up, we get dressed, have breakfast or whatever, go to work. Well, used to go to work. Now we've got the coronavirus, not a lot of people working anymore, but just think about the routine. You had this routine, all right? And this routine never really gave you inner changes, all right? It only gave you sensations of the experiences you lived, which made you feel good or bad, right? So life's experiences made you feel good and bad. And in between these two sensations of good and bad, you're kind of growing up. But spirituality is different. Spirituality is voluntary growth. So all the things I'm going through between good and bad now become to have some kind of an interpretation, because I can direct it all towards the purpose of life. And once the events of life start to have a direction about where I'm going, then you can begin to decipher the language of the creator, and then it becomes an attainment. Okay, I don't know if I managed to put that across in a simpler way. Understanding Baal Islam's writings is a bit difficult, so I have to combine it with with a bit of experience as well. Obviously, I'm not where he is. He's the pinnacle of his correction. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is the attainment of the creator can only happen by actually discovering his actions and going through those phases, like cause and consequence, like a mom and dad holding your hand and teaching you how to walk and so forth. So all of all of these things you can only go through, just like you go through them in the family, you can go through them in the environment, which is the group. Okay. So that's what I was trying to convey. We've got a question from P. Green. I thought the sages said if one does not reach correction in the current corporeal body, that person would reincarnate in another body to complete their spiritual work. Well, either way, reincarnation, as long as you haven't finished your spiritual advancement, corporeal existence or perception of reality is a necessity. This is why I said without corporeally existing, you can't really build your next spiritual state. But think of corporeality, like I said when I was explaining it, think of corporeality not as a body of flesh and bones and meat and stuff, but because that's an animate level, right? Our body is an animal. What is reincarnating is the sensations that you're going through, these changes. That's what's causing a reincarnation. So if you think about it from a body-wise, meat, bone, flesh, it's really narrow and shallow. It just has no substance at all either. A real reincarnation, you should start to think about it from the point of the wisdom of Kabbalah, is how you're going through inner changes. That's a reincarnation. So you can actually go through a lot of reincarnations while still being alive in this body. You don't have to die at all. Yeah? And we'd actually like to do that, because the more changes we go through, the more and the faster we can advance in spirituality. Nice question though. But with the wisdom of Kabbalah, try to separate the body, the physical body, from the spiritual work. It really becomes confusing. And then, this is where all the religions come in. All the religions relate everything to your physical body when it has absolutely nothing to do with your soul. Because the physical body is just an animal and it just ends up dead. What we do is we use this animal to build something which is beyond the animal. So in order for me to build something beyond the animal, I need the animal. Okay, this is why you need to understand that they're two separate things which are unrelated. So if I want to build my next state in anything in life, okay, so let's say I want to be a doctor, and I'm in the first year of medical school. I need to be in the first year in order to build the second year. So that building of the second year isn't a matter of my body. It's a matter of my intelligence or attainments, or the additional things I've added to myself in order to now add the next level. But I needed the body because my brain is in there, my sensations are in there. Okay, so then the body becomes just a tool to build your spirituality. I don't know if I managed to put it across in a comprehensible fashion. But at the end of the day, think of your body as just a tool. Just like you need a donkey or a horse to get from one place to another, you need the body to get from corporeality to spirituality. Try to see things in corporeality as that. Okay. Let's see. Dragon Milanovic is asking, hello, greetings from Canada. How does Kabbalah explain uncontrollable thoughts? Well, it's uncontrollable because we don't have a control on our nature at the moment. Our nature is a desire to receive pleasure. So we want to receive pleasure all the time. And the way the software inside of us works is it's in an egoistic fashion. Okay, so let's say I want to get something. My mind starts thinking about how to get what I want. So my thoughts are directly related to my desires. So it's impossible for me to change my thoughts unless I change my environment so that what I want changes. Does that make sense? Because we are created as a desire to receive pleasure. Okay, so we're desire machines. We want to feel good. We want things and we want to fulfill those things so that we can be happy, or we think we can be happy. So the way our mind thinks is, well, if I get what this guy wants, he's going to be happy, so we're going to be happy. So now I begin to think about how to get what I want. So if you want to change your thoughts, you have to be inside an environment which is influencing you to want something else, so that your thoughts can be related to those new wants, these new desires. There is no other way. Because you watch the TV, the first thing happens is you start to think about thinking what you saw on the TV. Even when with everything, you read a book, all of a sudden your mind, your thoughts start going astray to those things you read about, you watched on the TV, the commercials, even on billboards and so on. So it's impossible for a person to control his thoughts. The only way a person can direct his thoughts properly is by proper selection of an environment where the environment is influencing my desires in such a way that my thoughts are working in that specific direction. There is no other way. We cannot control our thoughts. We are products of the environment. So in whichever environment I'm in, I'm going to be influenced in terms of what I want, how I think, what my intentions are, everything. It's a good question. Okay. So attaining the emanator, we have done. I won't move on to the next one because it's a bit long and we've only got 5 minutes. So recognizing the attainment. Okay, that's the subheading we stopped off at. So we'll carry on with this article next Tuesday. Basically, let's just wrap it up, okay? A person who's born in this world, a person with a dot in the heart, or a regular person, let's say, right? Any regular person, all of us in life, we have this desire to discover who created us, what we're doing here. It's really embedded in all of us. And like I said, when we're children, we worry, we wonder about these things. We ask our parents, and most of the time we don't get a satisfying answer. And as we go to school, as we grow up, life starts, bringing us all kinds of things. We forget about this question. Who created us? Why are we living here? What is it all for? So during our lifetime, this question could pop up again. And if it's a prominent question inside of us, if it's really felt like a deficiency, like a need to discover, to know, then, we might start some kind of a spiritual conquest, spiritual quest to discover, and look into all kinds of spiritual methods and so forth. So a person who comes to the wisdom of Kabbalah is pretty much a person who's going through these searchings. So once he's gone through several searches or years of searching, he comes to the wisdom of Kabbalah, and if he can resonate with it, what it's trying to teach, then we'll begin to study. As one begins to study the wisdom of Kabbalah, one begins to then develop internally. This takes a bit of time, just like kids grow. It takes time for children to grow. A person also needs to be patient. He needs to give himself some time so he can work, he can digest, and really chew the material and work practically inside the group so he can go through these inner changes. And once a person starts to go through these inner changes, he begins to relate to his life just like a kid is growing up. But children don't really relate to their lives as they grow up too much, because they just grow up. They're not aware of them growing up. The parents are aware that they're growing up, but the kid himself is running around doing all kinds of things. He's not really aware of the fact that he or she is growing up. So in spirituality, we're voluntarily putting ourselves into this process of development. So what begins to happen is this conscious development of going through inner changes. And these inner changes then begin to bring you an understanding of cause and consequence. It begins to, it brings you this understanding of how reality is created, what's behind reality, how you can feel that reality, how you can actually feel the reason for things, the cause, rather than the consequence, because in our lives, we're just living consequences, right? Things always happen to us, and we're asking ourselves, why me? Because we don't understand why, okay? Because we don't understand the why. So the wisdom of Kabbalah really gives us the ability, it gives us the opportunity to begin to discover what's behind everything. And that's what's actually called attaining the creator. It's a solid, concrete understanding of how reality works. All right, so sometimes the texts of Bala Sulam, Rabash, or Kabbalah sound like they're a little, old-fashioned with religious texts in it and so forth. But try to look at it a bit out of the picture, out of the box. And keep an open mind. All right. So these Kabbalists wrote things many years ago. So according to the time period they lived in, they wrote things in a certain style. So in the 21st century, I'm trying to do my best to, depict for you the situation that a 21st century person would be going through. All right. But the reason I want to stay loyal to the text is Every Kabbalist always teaches from the sources. So Kabbalists always bring the sources of the authentic material. And this is why we should learn Baal Islam as students of B'nai Baruch and students of the wisdom of Kabbalah at B'nai Baruch. We should always learn and try to delve into Baal Islam and Rabash. Even though we may not understand it, it doesn't really matter. We're trying, and that effort really gives us a growth spurt as well. So we're really going through these growth phases as we delve into things, and even if we don't understand them, it helps us a lot. All right. So I hope this Tuesday evening was good for you. I'm glad we didn't have technical problems. I'm glad we're back on track on Tuesday, and hopefully we'll see you guys next week. All the best. Have a great evening or a great day, depending where you are and when you're watching. Bye-bye.